We've got the transmission case assembled onto the bell housing. Now we need to check transmission end play. And for that, we're just going to use a straight bar of steel and a caliper. Caliper is zeroed out. What we're going to do is set this down right into the base of the bearing bore for a reading of 1497. Now the next step is to go to the back of the parking pawl right on the shaft, okay, for a reading of 1539. Now we subtract the smaller number. That's going to equal out to be 42. Now the overall end play wants to be between 12 and 21 thousandths. So if we got 42 thousandths of clearance, we're going to measure our shims here. And our shims measure out to be 28 thousandths. Now 28 from 42 equals 14 thousandths, and that's perfect for what we need. So let's drop those shims down onto the shaft. Going to take our bearing and install our bearing now. Very nice. And get our snap ring pliers. And that down in there. Okay, we've seated the snap ring down into the groove. And to finish off the process, we're going to install a new rear seal. Simple, just going to tap it flush with the case. Now we're going to take and install our output flange and our 12-point nut, 30mm nut. Run that down on there. This nut needs to be torqued to 147 foot-pounds. And that completes the assembly of our case. Okay, as you can see, we got our transmission back up on the bench, and the last thing that we want to do before we put the valve body on and tighten that all up is to air check the clutch packs inside the transmission. We're going to do that with some compressed air. Right here, different passages represent the different clutches, and we're going to start off with right here, the B1 clutch. Now you can hear it. What's happening here is I'm letting off and air checking, and I can actually pull the nozzle away, and it's holding so well that air is escaping as I'm pulling it away. So that's a real nice air check on the B1 clutch. Right here we have the K1 clutch. You can hear it, you can see it's pushing the nozzle off. That's a real tight seal right there. That's really great. Finally up front here we have the K2 clutch. You can hear the thud inside the transmission there. And all the excess air is pushing it off, pushing the nozzle out of the hole. That's a real great air check. We like to hear it like that. Back here in the back, this position right here is the BR clutch. Let's listen. You can see how well that's holding. When I pull it out, it lets the air blow back out of the transmission. So here we have the B2 and the K3 clutch. You know, it doesn't work. What do? I mean, we can't really air check it like that. It doesn't fix. What we're going to do is we're going to seal this up with our shop towel. We're just going to lay it in there and put some pressure on there. Now you can hear the clutch apply. That was the K3. Now we've got the B2. That's the same kind of hole. Look at that. It just doesn't fit very well at all. Leaks out a lot of air. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a little pressure on our shop towel here. Oh boy, listen to that. That's a real good air check right there. Perfect. Now, when you get good air checks like that, that's good workmanship right there, and we're ready to put the valve body back onto the case. Okay, we've got a great air check going on here, and there's a couple of items left in the case. Now this is the B3 feed pipe. We've put new O-rings on the feed pipe. Well, let's see, we air checked all the rest of the clutches, but we didn't check the B3 pipe. Well, how about the B3 clutch? So look at this, we've got a great tool right here to do just that. Install that into the B3 pipe. Into the B3 drum, I should say. Now we're going to hit it with some air. That's a real nice air check. Now, if you should get a little frisky with the air, you might be careful. It'll blow the pipe right up and out of the case. So don't use too much air when you're performing the air check. Okay, so now we have our filter that goes into the case. Now we're ready to install the valve body onto the case. Swing it around. Okay, we've lubed up our O-rings. Our O-ring on our feed pipe is going to fit right in there. And the last thing is we want to make sure that our manual valve is ready to be installed onto the rooster comb over here. Okay? So, a few things. Once again, a few things we have to worry about. The O-rings here are lubed up. The pipe is going to fit in here. And we're going to index the manual valve into the rooster comb all here at the same time. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, we've got the manual valve on there. Okay, now you'll see it's a little springy right here. That's completely normal because of the detent lever. Okay, see it's a little springy. That's pretty normal. So now we're going to go ahead and put in our washered bolts. And 3 more back here. We're going to carefully run these down and we're going to torque them to 90 inch-pounds once we're complete here. Okay, once these are torqued to 90 inch-pounds, we're going to install our filter, which happens to be right here underneath the bench. We've got a new O-ring. The O-ring's been lubed up. Work it down on there. Okay, we've got a new gasket on our oil pan. This is a form-fitting gasket. Okay, that's looking real good on there right now. We're simply going to lay that on the case right here. Remember, these bolts, they're the spacers that keep this all in line. So we're going to start over here at the corner. Just start that in by hand. Over at the opposite corner. Case. Okay. There we go here. Now we're ready to tighten them all down. Okay. There we go. Pan's all snug down and we're ready to flip this over and put the tail housing on. Okay, we have our tail housing here. We've cleaned up the gasket surfaces on both the transmission side and the transfer case side. This is a 4MATIC transmission. That means it's a all-wheel drive Mercedes setup. And the two-wheel drive might look a little bit different. It may have an extension housing with an extension housing bushing, which we would pay attention to with a rear seal. But our rear seal's back here. So on a four-wheel drive model, we're going to take our gasket and put it on the guide studs. Hold that on there like so. Align the guide studs up. Okay, we've got the tail housing resting nicely on the case. We're just going to push a couple of bolts in there just to hold them on because they're rather deep inside. And we're going to slowly wind them down there. There. Now we can take each individual bolt, run it down in there. Okay, now we're ready to torque those bolts to 90 inch-pounds. Okay, we finished running down the bolts on our tail housing. Now they need to be torqued to 90 inch-pounds. That concludes our program on our 7229 rebuild, and I want to remind you to use only Mercedes fluid in this transmission. Any other fluid could jeopardize the great job we've just done on this unit, and this is an expensive rebuild and we really want to treat it right. I'd also like to take this time to thank TransTool for this great piece of equipment that they've given us to use for this program.